So really excited today to talk about a bunch of stuff, but first a little bit about me. I'm Joel. I like musical theater. As Sean's saying, I like football too and other stuff like coding sometimes. I don't take myself too seriously. I like to be on stage and it's fun. This was me in Spam a lot. This was me. This was super fun. It's Frankenstein. But just in case you're worried about me being super serious, I'm super not. I'm mostly a dad, and there's my son playing football, and that's my daughter. She came from Halifax, so that was great. And I wish I was doing that right now, but this is fun too. Okay. What do I believe? I believe agents are the next frontier in front-end development. In case you haven't noticed, I think this has pretty much already happened. And there's more and more places where I think as developers or just technical leaders, we can find use cases for agents that are really cool. And I was thinking about this the other day. A lot of us use CMS in our job to create websites, and we're pretty good at doing that. We're pretty good at getting them indexed with tools like that do search, things like Algolia. I'm going to show Algolia today, but not very many of us are using agents as part of our workflow in terms of what we're coding, like creating an agent. Some of you might have played around with it. I'm going to show you today how to do some really cool stuff. The first thing we're going to show is how to do, well, I'll get to it in a second, but everyone uses Google, and we all have that search summary that's up there, and that's an AI. We're going to show how to do that, but on your own website. So it's pretty cool. The tools I'm going to be using today, I'm using Agility for the Headless CMS. You can use pretty much any CMS for this. Next.js is the front-end framework. The reason for that is we're using an AI toolkit that's based on Next.js or built for React and Next.js. So that just makes it easy for that. We're using Algolia for the search. I'm actually using a free version of Algolia. You can use pretty much any search for this though. And for our AI agent, I'm going to give away this code and show you the code later, but you can either use your OpenAI key if you have a ChatGPT, or if you're using Azure, you can use an Azure AI backend too. Obviously, there's lots of other ones you can use. Those are the two that I have examples for. So let's look at this actual use case here. A lot of people have search on their website where you just get boom, 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 search results, which is great. But having that, I think the expectation from users now is that you'll have some kind of search summary that'll do a little bit more for them. So we'll show you how to actually create that. And it has a couple of side benefits, because right now when you query, if someone writes a big question on your website in your search query, it's really hard to get a good result from that. And our AI tooling can help us even get better results for those longer queries, which we actually want our customers typing in, right? So let's look at, normally we're going to get a search results like this. And if we're looking at the architecture for that, it's pretty simple. We're going to have, a search component, like a React component. It's going to call into an API endpoint here to do our search, and that's going to call into Algolia. So super basic. In fact, Algolia might even have a drop-in component that you don't even need to create anything. It's just drop in some JavaScript. So search components are super basic. I couldn't find one. Now, let me know if you know of one. I couldn't find a search component that automatically does, or even a search vendor that even does that automated search summary at the top. But if you know one, throw that in the chat and let me know. Although I can't see the chat from where I am, but I'll look at it later. We want to do that search summary. So we're going to show you actually how to do that. What's the architecture for that? It's a little more complicated than what the other architecture is. First of all, we're going to use Agility here to basically configure the search. As a developer, the whole reason to use CMS here is so that we don't have to hard code everything. We could absolutely hard code everything that's going on in here, but then as a developer, every time the client that you built this for or anyone needs to make a change to it, then you've got to go change your code. And one of those major things is the system prompt, and that is going to completely change how this agent works. I'm calling this an agent, even though it's only a one-shot agent. We're not going to have a chat with it yet. All right, so we have a little kind of a chat component here, but that's just pulling down that summary. We're going to call into our AI search, which I've got here through the AI SDK. So we're using the Vercel AI SDK, which is free. It's going to call into our OpenAI or Azure AI. That is going to use what's called a search tool, which is going to do this. It's going to go search the website and come back and summarize that for us. And then in our component, we're actually also going to call our search as well. So we're going to see the summary at the top and then the list of searches at the bottom. And the only thing we're using Agility for, Agility is populating the search index that Algolia is using. We'll show you how to do that in a second too. But also it's going to give us things like, what's your system prompt? Is AI even enabled? Maybe we want to turn it off and turn it on, without having to redeploy. and what is the, the temperature and the how many tokens are allowed, things like that. You could configure anything. And I just wanted to show how that can kind of power your search configuration. But as a developer, you're in charge of all this code. So I'm going to switch real quick and just show you that code. And then we're going to come back to this to show even a deeper architecture for like the second part of this, which is why I'm talking really fast. Okay. So jumping in, let's actually show in our web browser first. I'm going to show out Algolia. So I just have a regular Algolia index here. And if I ask it, this is the index that's created. If I ask it a long question, like I don't get anything, right? And I don't have a huge site. This is just a demo site. But if I just do a thing like the word, I don't know, galaxy, I'm going to get lots of stuff, okay? Like keywords. So these engines are really good at doing keyword searches, not so great by default for doing like long searches. But I can create this index for free using Algolia, and it's a great tool. So when you create your free Algolia account, you can set this up, choose the free account, and you can set up a free crawler. It doesn't let you crawl very often or very much, like 10,000, but it does 10,000 crawls per month, so it's pretty good. And then you can configure that after. So I'm not going to go through all of the steps, but once you have your website built, you can really easily add a search index to it. And if you just want to do basic search, that's cool too. You learned how to do that today if you didn't already know how to do it. There are tons of search tooling out there. There's ones that are specialized for different things. I'm not advertising for Algolia. It just happens to be free, and that's really great when you're learning stuff, okay? This is our demo site that we're working with. It is just a basic site that I created for proof of concepts to kind of give away. That code I will show at the end. That's for this. It's a Git public Git repo. Show you how to do that. What's going on. But let's just demo real quick what this looks like so we can kind of know what we're trying to shoot to. I triggered the thing. You can do Command K. So we've got these three default. This is coming from the CMS as well. I'll show you how that is configured. But we can also type whatever we want. But it's just like, go ahead and try this and see how it works. So we have our AI summary that streams in, and it didn't find anything. So that's great. Thanks for the demo. Let's try a different one. Okay, here we go. So it gives us a summary here, and it streams it in, which is pretty nice. It's actually kind of a hard thing to do that the AI toolkit does for us. And then it shows us the related searches that it found. Doesn't look like it was a great search, but it shows you the idea, okay? So we're going to look at this locally in a second to see how all the code is kind of wired up. But first, I'll jump into, this is agility, and I'm going to look at the model that I set up here for this. So I want a bunch of general settings like, what is the input prompt? Are we going to even show this AI? We're going to have this full agent mode, which I'm going to show after this. So I'm going to try to keep, that's why I'm going so fast. What's our system prompt? What's the max tokens, things like that. And what are our three default prompts? It's like 3 fields. So like pretty basic modeling here that sets us up so that a non-developer can then go and like do this. And they might not know how to do a system prompt, but if you give them an example one, they might know how to change it, or you can even just being able to change this without having to go into the code is really, really useful. And then have these kind of things. So I really, really recommend for anyone who's coding out there, especially if you're doing stuff for customers, for clients, use a CMS. There's lots of them out there with different licensing models and whatever. That is going to help you in your life kind of level up what you do. So like no sales pitch on CMS, except for the fact that it helps you as a developer. There's lots of them out there. Okay, cool. So we set up Algolia, we set up our search indexer, we set up our CMS to give us a bunch of like content that we can work with. Let's see how that is all tied together with the code. So I'm in my Next.js project here, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing. There's a lot of different components in there, but I'm going to zone in directly on what we talked about here. So we have our search route, the AI search route. I'm going to look at that first, and is using our AI SDK. So it's just a post request. So like we're in our API and an app router for Next.js here. We have in our API folder, we have a subfolder called AI, and then this is the AI search route that's here, okay? So we'll set up a few things to start. First, I'm going to need all the environment variables that I need. So I just validate that. We set up, make sure we have all the environment variables we have for Algolia. That's just like, you should always do that. We have the messages that are coming in from the request, okay? So these UI messages are set up as part of the AI toolkit that is, so like this is, so like the NPM package is literally called AI. That's here, okay? That is created by, I think, Vercel. It's an open source project though, so you can use it anywhere. We're going to call get search config. This is from Agility, okay? So this is actually calling into the Agility SDK, and we have some default values in case like someone doesn't set something up. if it's not configured, and then we actually call, get content item, get content list to go grab that from Agility. So that would be like from whatever CMS or other backend. You could use a database if you want to do that. We are hard coding it with English right now, but you could also not hard code that if you wanted to. Okay. And then we have, and so like this is how we say, hey, it's turned off potentially, right? We're also going to set up our search tool. So the way agents work is if you've all used any AI tool, when you type something in, that gives it context, right? And the system prompt is also part of that context. And so that's why the system prompt is so important. It's going to tell your particular agent how it's supposed to work. But then we can add more context to that by doing searches. So this is our search tool that the AI agent will call in the background when it decides it needs to. And part of our system prompt should say, call this every time. We really just want you to search. So when we create this search tool, again, this tool is part of the AI toolkit, this tool method that will give us this object that can be called. And essentially we give it a description of like what it does. We can say what the inputs are. So the inputs here are literally just our query and our limit. And it uses Zod to describe that. And this is the key because this is also part of the context. So this is going to tell the AI agent that you're hooking up how to interact with this tool that you've created. And the tools can be pretty much anything you want to do. And in this case, we're going to do an Algolia search. And I've console.log these out so we can actually see what it's doing in the background as we're testing this out, okay? So we've got our search parameters, and literally we're going to just use the Algolia SDK to do our search for us. And then we're going to loop through these. And I've done a little bit of like mishmashing of this content to kind of make it come out easier. I actually vibe coded this a little bit. So this was Claude that helped me kind of like get these in a little bit nicer format to return, and also did some substring on here so that we don't have a huge search result. And this is something you can kind of tweak as you go, but you don't want to return too much from your tool calls because you don't want to blow up your context. That's called the context window in your agent. And that is where you start to run into like agents not performing as well or hallucinating. When you return too much from a tool call, they start to get like bogged down with that. It uses a lot more tokens and it's expensive and it doesn't work as well. So we want to return fewer things. I think my limit here of stuff to return, I think it's 5. We're going to return the top 5 things to use. And AI is going to summarize that for us in our thing. Let's see how that works. So that's our tool that's all set up. We're going to get the system prompt, the temperature, and the max output tokens from our CMS. We're going to get our AI model, okay? And this is normally, in a lot of the examples, this is done like inline. But since I'm actually sharing this code between another agent that I'll show in a minute, I put this in its own spot, and it's good to have its own files for things. So I've got the ability, we're going to either use OpenAI itself, so like your Chat GPT. So if you want to use this code and you have like a Chat GPT key set up, then go ahead and that will work here. The other thing you can do is use Azure AI, which I use for work all the time. So I already had an account that was set up for that. So I have both of these. It also has tooling for other AI backends that you can hook into. I haven't experimented with any of those yet, but everyone's got their favorite AI tool. So this get AI model just does that. It's essentially just reading your config and initializing stuff there, okay? Now, this is where we get to the part that does all the work, this stream text. This is coming from that AI library as well. Okay, if I scroll around really fast and be annoying. All right. So this, by the way, streaming text from a route handler is actually really hard if you're going to do it yourself, especially in TypeScript. I find it easier in like C#, but this is taken care of for you. You don't have to go ahead and do that. All right. And let's just go through the setup for this. We've got our model and our system. So that's the model that we created here. So this is the backend that it's going to talk to, which is, I think, in the one I've set up here, I think it's GPT-4o mini from OpenAI through Azure. And the system prompts coming from our CMS. So that's really important. Then these messages, this is the input from the user. Okay, and we're going to, this convert to model messages is also part of the AI toolkit, but it's going to take those messages in and then, which is this one message, essentially our search query. It's going to decide how to call our tool. And I've got the tool choice set to auto. There's a bunch of different things you can do there. And I actually gave it 5 steps. It only needs to have 1 extra step. If you don't have this set up, it won't actually call your tool. So there's some gotchas in this API. But this is great because literally, like, not very many lines of code, like this is our agent. This is it. All we need to do. Now it's a one-shot agent. We don't have multiple messages coming into here. We're going to get to that in a minute. So let's just see how this works locally, okay? So I think I have a localhost window here. Yeah, go ahead. Let's just actually refresh this. And I'm on the blog page here, so I can kind of get a hint of what to search for. So let's bring this thing up here. And when we click on one of these guys here, and this is nice to have by the way, anytime you're building an AI agent, I suggest having suggestions, because people are super lazy. And if you give them something to click on that like, hey, that's your search, they'll just do it. So if you're building a site and you want to like make somebody search for something, you can absolutely set that up by doing those default queries. So this is what we got back. We actually didn't get any search results back. Let's see what it did from the tool call. So the actual search query, it didn't figure out a good search query, which is brutal. So that's not so great. Let's try one of the other ones. And I've noticed that different models are like somewhat better or worse than at building these queries out. And Lumni, of course, is not great. Let's build one ourselves. Actually, look at the content. Okay, let's ask about like info sweep, this is, by the way, all AI generated content too. Tell me about, oops, I can't type. Info sweep. So here we go. So it actually gives us some search results. Looks like it gave us in English and French. Probably should have thought about that before I translated it. But then it gives us this nice summary up here, okay? So you can see here, the Algolia search query was just the word info sweep. So it generated a keyword query for me based on, when we set up this tool, okay, we set up our tool up there and gave it, a bunch of instructions. So as a developer, if I was going to go back and fix those other queries, I would go into my system prompt, but then I would also go into my tool prompt. So if I just back up here and find it where I created my tool right here, I would go into my tool prompt and maybe even have this come from my CMS as well, so that I could tweak that without having to redeploy my code. So we've got the tool call, the description, as well as the description of the query. And I've just like come up with some basic stuff here, but based on your content index, you could probably, fine tune these exactly for what you want. And by the way, AI is really great at building these for you and tweaking them. So I highly recommend, if you were going to like improve upon what I've done here, is to take these pieces of description, pull them out into your CMS, model those into just like set up fields for them, and then literally pull them in for here. So in my tool call, I could have been passing that description for these two things in as parameters. And then, I already have my AI config here, which is coming from the CMS. Those are just new properties that I could pass into here. Okay, so you can kind of use that to just like grab your setup, your configuration from your CMS, and then pass it everywhere. What I don't recommend, do not put your keys in the CMS. I see that a lot. Keep your keys in your environment file. That is a thing. Like if you change your keys that you're using for AI backend tools or AI models, that is a thing that you probably want to have set up in your environment file and not in the CMS, because some other developer could use that and expose that somewhere in the front end. Okay, we don't want that to happen. Okay, so hopefully that clears up how the route works. That's the back end. Let's look at the front end now. And part of the thing with the front end is we have a component here, and you can see here we're passing into the properties of this component our default prompts. Where did they come from? There's a bunch of prop drilling that happens in here. Probably could have done it with a context to make it a little easier. So in this Next.js project, if you understand Next.js, we've got a layout file. I'm going to just search for this here. Give me 2 seconds. Layout.tsx, which is, I think, right here. At the top of this is a React server component. So it's calling this exact same, hey, get my search config that we did in our other route. Okay, so it's making a server to server call, not a client to server call, because this is a React server component. But the component, the search modal is a client component. So anything that I have in here, I have to be very careful about what I decide to pass in, because there might be some stuff in my CMS that I don't want to expose, like if I had keys in there, which you don't want to. But it's really important to understand that like anything that goes from a server component to a client component is going to be exposed into the source of that web page that you have. Okay, so that's how that gets in there. There's a bunch of prop drilling. I can't remember where it is. Oh yeah, so we have this floating AI search thing, and then it's all subcomponents of that. I'm not going to go through all the React stuff, because if you want to, you can figure that out. Let's just dig into the actual AI part of this, and the biggest part of it is this use chat hook. That hook comes from the AI SDK, and they've got a bunch of React components. I haven't looked at the other frameworks. I'm more of a React developer myself, but you can do this in things like, I'm pretty sure they do Vue and Svelte, maybe. I'm not sure what other frameworks they use, probably Angular. Anyway, let's look at how I'm using this, because there's a couple interesting things that we're doing here. And if we look back here, we want to show our summary. So there's a component for that, but we also want to show these nice search results, right? The actual search results that are coming back, and you've got like, you know, kind of look like a Google search result. Then you can tweak those yourself. So we're basically telling it to, hey, use the AI search backend that's here. Okay, so that's calling into our search component, and it's expecting a post, and it's going to post at these messages, okay, that it is coming through from right here, okay, from the request.json. So that we don't have a choice about how that's implemented and how that works, okay? But then we've got this cool thing on tool call. So it will tell us when the backend made a tool call, and we can actually grab the query here. So what we're doing is when it makes a tool call, we're going to make a second call just to call the search directly, because we just want to do the old school search below it. So this top part is like, that's the only thing that AI is doing, and the bottom part's coming directly from Algolia. So we're kind of hacking into this use chat to get it to tell us what it called when it called into our search tool, okay? And I know I only have one tool in here, so I didn't have to check, hey, what tool actually got called. But if you had multiple tools as part of your AI for whatever reason, then you'd probably want to do a little bit more logic into here, okay? So now we just need to, this is all being shown in the dialog, and we've got components that are set up for rendering all of this stuff. If we look at the search summary component, we're using this response component. And that response component is super important because, and you can see we're looping through these assistant messages. Okay, so those messages are getting passed into here. All the messages that came back from that use chat hook, we're saying we only want the ones that are assistant. So I just want the message that came back from the assistant is like the AI. And then what happens is this response handles like markdown, and it handles the streaming of this text changing, and it re-renders it nicely. So we don't have to do that. That component is coming from, I actually had to pull it in. It's using Shad CN. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce Shad CN, but that's a really cool component that essentially you install their, it's called Vercel elements or AI elements that they've done. And you can see it's using the stream down thing. So that great, like if I just do this again, hopefully you can see this actually streams in. As I said, that's not easy to do in a nice way. They figured that out for you. So if you're using React, this is an awesome way to do that, okay? So super cool, but what next? Like, okay, this, and that might be great for your use case, but what if we wanted to do more? What if we wanted a full agent experience, okay? And I hope I don't run out of time here, but I do want to show this. So I enabled in my CMS the idea to turn on full agent mode. And you can see here, I actually get another tab that shows up because I've got like a hide when on here. And in here, we're also gonna try and capture a contact on here. So this is great for lead generation on your site. And I've just said, hey, my post URL is like, I'm pretty sure this is just an Azure workflow or something like that. I can't remember what it is. It's a Zapier. You could use anything for that. Okay, so we've got that turned on. I'm actually gonna publish this, push it out. So we turned on full agent mode. I'm not going to change the system prompt. I did hard code my system prompt because I didn't have time to change it all. But again, we're going to use now, let's look at our architecture. It gets even a little more fun. So for full agent mode, we want to do something like this, right? Like you want to have, hey, well, I'm selling you some car insurance, and it'll ask you some stuff or whatever. Like you can set all that up, and it's actually not that hard. It's actually a little easier than what we did before in terms of the number of things involved. But there's the way we actually have the chat UI is a little more complex, okay? So we've got a more complex chat component, and we've got an extra tool in a new AI chat backend. So let's actually go in. I don't know if I have any more on this. Oh, just I will leave this up. I'll put this up at the end. Okay, so let's look at those extra things there. So I'm going to close a few of these guys, and we'll look at this route. So this route is underneath. So we have API/AI/agent route. So this is more of a full featured agent now. Okay, similar kind of stuff. We're going to validate our environments. We're going to get the messages from the back end, or from the front end, I should say. We're going to set up our search tooling. That's all good. We're going to get everything from the CMS, set the search tooling. We're also going to set up a contact capture tool, which I don't know if I'll have time to go into that, but that's very similar. I will go into it. Very similar. It's just basically going to give us like some messaging and some stuff that we output here. Okay. We've got our system prompt, which I said I did hard code this. Sorry, because it is a lot different, a different system prompt when we're going full agent mode. But we're using the same stream text, a call from the AI toolkit. We got our model. Again, here's our system prompt. And then we have an extra tool now. So we've got our contact capture tool, and that's it. That's all we got to do. And so it's like very similar backend. Okay. Now on the front end, there's a little bit more going on. We have our use chat, which is similar because we don't have to hook into the tool calls, but where we're showing our messages now, we're actually sending these messages, if I can find it, into, so we have like, again, those Vercel elements give you a whole bunch of stuff. Like, so I literally just went to their, it's on the AI agent toolkit that they've got there. I literally just copy and pasted one of their examples and then modified it for how I wanted it to look. So let's actually see how this looks locally. Still on localhost here. So if I refresh this, it should now, since I turned on full agent mode, which it literally just have like, if full agent mode, then show this other, like this AI chat component instead of the other one. So here we go, a slightly different thing. Now we've got more of a conversation window and of course we've got some more, our default prompts are always nice. So how can I make more money from AI? You can see we're streaming in all this stuff and it's just because our system prompt is slightly different, we get some different stuff. I don't think this actually did a search for us, but let's actually see the search. Oh, we did get two. Oh no, we didn't do a search. So it decided we got auto on our search, on our tool decision. So it decides when it wants to do anything. Okay. So let's do the tell me about info sweep, which is like one of the made up words that was in there. And now it should do a search result. And you can see here, we're using what's called generative UI, which is a fancy term for saying when we get a tool call, when it finds a tool call, it's going to output that differently. So you can see here, if it's just a text, then we're going to just do that regular response, which we saw right here. This is just text. But when we get a search result from the tool, we now are going to actually output those search results directly in our chat, which is wild. So that's why we get this great UI that's here, okay? And now let's do one more thing. Let's just force it. It's like, I want to talk to sales, which no one ever says, but talk to, well, just someone. People type that a lot into agents, by the way. I want to talk to a human. And here you go. So now we're going to actually output our components. So you can see down below, if we call tool contact capture, we're going to actually, it's got a bunch of like states in here. I also vibe coded this, by the way. So most of your coding agents are actually really good at coding this stuff up. But you can see here, if we actually get that post URL that comes back, it tells us where to post it, which I don't love, but probably don't want to expose that, but it's okay. We don't care for this demo. We're going to actually run, it's just a React component to like do this. And, these are pretty good. Let's do that, let's do that actual email.com, blah, blah, blah. Like this actually works. So you can actually put full UI components inside your agent. And that's why I think this is the new front end, because people expect this now on a lot of places, and you could almost replace your entire website, because a lot of websites are just meant to capture contact info. They're meant to convert users. Well, there's no better way to convert users than if you have this kind of agent that does it. And it's so much more capable than a lot of even the tools that you buy out there. So like there's a lot of good agents, and I worked with a lot of those, but you can code up something that's really, really good just by doing this yourself. So hopefully you learned a lot. I think I'm actually kind of on time. I'm not sure. Totally lost track of time there, which happens all the time when I'm coding. But that pretty much takes us through everything I wanted to show. I'm going to put this on the screen. If you want to look at this code, it's here. I'm not sure if I have a way of sharing this link outside of this. I don't know if these slides will get shared. This is being recorded. But essentially, if you go to like github.com/agility, it is one of the public repos that's up there. If you look there, so this is the demo site that I do as for a lot of folks. There's a ton of code in here. If you want to see this with agility, like if you want to run this full site locally, just give me a shout and I will set it up for you. Happy to do that. We have free trials of agility. happy to show you like how all that works in a full demo, because I think it's really important for developers to kind of understand how to really build their careers, not only with CMS, but now with AI and building agents that run on top of those websites. I really believe that's the future. So right on. Hopefully you guys enjoyed what you saw. And I hope there's some questions.
Joel, that was amazing. Yeah, if you all have questions, drop them in the chat. I did see we just had someone dropped a link in there, so folks in the chat now have a link to that repo,
Oh,
which is
cool.
great.
Right on.
Okay, Joel. So that first of all, I love that pattern at the end of like when you recognize a particular tool call that you can then you can funnel people to the right place. I've been playing around with that quite a bit at Netlify. But what I wanted to start with was you started with kind of that classic search pattern and evolved into an agent mode in a really kind of a fluid way. Do you have a recommendation on when someone uses that classic search versus the more interactive chat? Do you feel like everything is going toward the direction of chat? What do you recommend there?
I've been doing so much thinking about AI and how do you get people to trust something, whether that's good or bad, no matter how you feel about it. But it's called cognitive offload, where people decide that, you know what, I do trust this thing. And I think the Google search summary is the perfect kind of gateway to that for AI. So I would say I think people are ready for it because it's on so many Google responses. So I would recommend, if you're implementing site search, either find a tool that does that automatically or build something like this yourself. It's worth it. It's not going to cost that much from in token costs because it's just a one-shot deal, and you could cache the responses of that, just like we cache search results and things like that. I didn't put that in this demo, but I think it's almost essential. People are expecting this now. I don't know if they're expecting a full-featured agent yet. I think that's like a little bit future thinking, but I think it's possible. You can do it. It's not easy to get it to be like production ready. Like it takes a lot of time and kind of care. But the search summary is pretty easy, and if you have a full website, like it works really, really well, kind of out of the box, even with the cheaper models. So I highly recommend doing it.
Yeah, have you played around with the caching at all? I haven't gotten that far yet.
Caching in Next.js is not the easiest to do. So I wouldn't use the Next.js caching. I would use like a Redis cache or something like that. Or
Okay.
like, for instance, like our site's deployed on Netlify. Netlify has a blob storage that you can use. That's perfect for caching stuff like this. Now the difference is when when the response is cached, you're not streaming it out, or you could stream it. I'm not even sure exactly how to do that. Like that's a bit of a pain, but you just have the cache response and you just like send it straight out. So it is a slightly different potential response. So there's little tricks there, but that means that if you, for instance, for that same query, if someone types in the same thing, you don't have to call into your AI agent again.
Yeah, that's a good point about the streaming because you probably would have to vectorize it in some way to do that. Yeah, really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay, we've got a question coming in from Michael. Michael asks, is the agent in full mode doing the UI or is the front end doing the UI based on the agent response?
Yeah, great question. So when you have those tool calls in your agent, what that tool call allows you to do is to have like JSON, literally a JSON object that's in part of that response. So as opposed to just, so you can have text responses to a portion of your agent response, but then when you have a tool call, it can return like literally raw JSON. And then your front end is responsible for generating the UI for that JSON. So we call it generative UI. You could use agents to like generate the UI at runtime, which I've never seen, but like no, you have to have a React component or some way of handling that tool call's response. And what's great is that you know the schema of its data, because there's the response of it is determined by like literally what you return from that tool call method. And in this case, like for the contact us, we returned like the prompt at the top. It says, hey, what we think is going to help convert that user, as well as the post URL, which probably we shouldn't have returned the post URL there. Probably should have been done like as part of a server component or something in there. But those components are client components only, even in a Next.js project. They're not server components. As far as I know, there's no way to do the server component from that. It would be cool to stream the whole UI out of the agent, but that's not how this example is working yet.
Interesting. Okay. And then earlier in the presentation, you showed that the AI SDK can wrap different model providers. Have
Yes.
you, and you said you've had or alluded to having different experiences with different providers. Can you maybe share a little bit more detail there and what you found, at least within the context of search, some that work particularly well or where you've struggled?
The two providers I've used, so I've used the OpenAI's sort of like I have a ChatGPT Pro license, and it allows you to give you like to get an OpenAI key. So I've worked with that. That is limited to a few different models. I've worked with GPT, so I worked with GPT-5, and it's like GPT-5 and GPT-4 and their variants. 5 is actually not as great for this because it's considered a thinking model. So I'm hoping that the tooling gets better at working with it. But like there's thinking models and like doing models. The doing models tend to be better for this kind of stuff, to making tool calls and whatnot. Now, I would love to learn more about how to build agents that have like a thinking portion of what they're doing, and then they do stuff so they to be better for the chat GPT models. I think that expectation of what an AI agent can do is going up and up as people use like better tools. Our expectations of them being smarter are really good. So I find that it's not the provider as much that makes as much difference. It's the model itself. So like GPT-5 served up from like Azure AI versus ChatGPT's backend is probably going to work pretty much the same, in my experience. But changing things like the temperature and the token, like the max tokens and things like that, is a big deal. By the way, if your max tokens are set too low, you will be so frustrated because it will just stop. Because it'll reach the max output tokens as it's
Oh,
generating
okay.
its stuff. Or if your context gets too big, it's maxing out on the tokens as part of the input, and then you just get nothing. And it's really hard if, as a developer, it's like I nothing streamed back, and your users are like or a demo that you're doing for a customer, which happened to me, and I'm like, this is
Oh,
embarrassing.
no.
Okay, I promise you that it doesn't always do that, but again, models are a little bit unpredictable as well, so that's tough because the same input can give you a different output. That technology is called evals, which is starting to become more of a thing. And I noticed that Chat GPT's like their tooling has like an evals playground kind of a thing, which I haven't used very much. That is one of the next frontiers in agent development, is working with evals to try and get system prompts and filtering input prompts from users so that they are more predictable. Yeah, tough. That's tough when you get differences there.
Yeah, that's super interesting. There's so much nuance to and knobs you got to twist and turn to get it
Yeah,
just right.
yeah.
Okay, one last question, because you're spending most of your time in the content management world, and I know there's been a lot of talk of, well, with all of this, I mean, essentially features like what you've showed here, is that the death of the CMS, or is there what is the future of the CMS? And really curious to hear your take on that.
Yeah. So to me, agents are the new front end, and every front end needs a back end. And CMS is like, at the very least, it's like a repo for all of the settings and the content that drives that. Content is still driving what is in your agents. In fact, text-based content is more important than ever before. And it's one of the things that tends to happen is with a new technologies, we tend to hard code a lot of stuff in our code, and then eventually it's like, oh, that system prompt should not be in there. Should it be a markdown file in my Git? Probably not there either. So just having your system prompt in the CMS is huge. Again, it could just be in your database, but like your database doesn't have all the workflow stuff that a CMS has. So we still see like the biggest competitor to Headless CMS out there is the developer who says, I can build my own CMS. And by all means, go ahead and do that. I did that. That was my career. I built a CMS, and 20 years later, I'm still working on it. I don't think it's going anywhere. I do think like we have an MCP server for agility. That is like hosted CMS, I think is going to kill, or like the needs that people need from that are going to make it really hard to justify self-hosting a CMS, because it is really hard to self-host a CMS. And then adding all the AI tooling and all that other stuff was probably going to be an upgrade. Also really hard with self-hosted stuff. Whereas like with Headless CMS that's SaaS, hey, we've a MCP. Here's the URL. You go call it. Just like Figma came out with theirs. Figma's this hosted service. Hey, new MCP server. Go ahead. You don't have to upgrade. You just get it. So providing that and those kind of AI type features that people are asking for now, you just get it out of the box and it's great and it happens fast. So I think it's sticking around for a while. I've kind of staked my career on it, but I can't wait to see what the future holds because AI is changing it for everybody.
100%. Yeah, that's a super interesting perspective and makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, CMS has been a lot of my career, so I want to definitely see it stick around. Joel, thank you so much for your time and for the conversation.
Yeah, appreciate you, man. Take care.